Welcome everyone to another edition of the Open Book, Open Mind Challenge. Now today is a very, very special day. I'm so excited to be talking with a good friend on Facebook and now hopefully a good friend in real life. We've been corresponding so often that I feel like I know you, and I was so happy that you agreed to do this Open Book, Open Mind Challenge with me because I do definitely feel like you have a lot to offer in terms of what you've done with the stories and the books that you've written. So, without further ado, everyone, I want to introduce you all to Miss Crystal Hubbard.
Hello, very pleased to meet you, and thank you so much for inviting me on today.
Now, like I said, I'm very excited to be speaking with you today. I'm so happy and so thrilled that you agreed to do this without any kind of reservations. And you for being
Well, I think we've had a wonderful kinship on Facebook. I mean, from the first, I don't even remember who sent who the friend request to even get the ball rolling, but once we became friends, I just settled right into that friendship, and it's just been so comfortable and so easy. So there was no hesitation saying yes when you asked me to do this today.
Thank you so much.
It's just a yes. It will always be a yes.
Thank you so much. One of the first memories I have of our friendship and our kinship, I noticed your name on one of the books I was reading to one of my kids.
Oh.
Yes.
I hope it's one of my books.
Oh, for sure. As a matter of fact, it was the last Black King of
Kentucky Derby, yep.
Yep. More like I'm into books. I got into books from an early age, and I was always reading, as most people are forced to do. But I really fell in love with books on a lot of different levels. As growing up, I started to find an escape in books, and I started to find a lot of interesting things and fun facts. And I was always the kind of kid that knew things that didn't matter because I was reading so much. But
of course,
and kind of like a nerd in that way. But I really, really started enjoying books again when I started to have my own kids, and I was reading to them. And so learning that you were writing these phenomenal books, and especially the series of books that you had for young children of minorities, I was really impressed. And I think that's how I first learned about you.
I am so pleased that that's how you discovered my work, because I knew I was going to be a writer. I fell in love with the library and my first librarian, Isabel Duncan, when I was 8 years old. My mother this was 1974, and we had just moved to a part of South St. Louis that was pretty much all white. Most of the people, our neighbors, were transplants from the Ozarks or Italian immigrants. And it was not a friendly atmosphere, to put it in the most simple way. But our house was at one end of the block, and the library was at the other end. And just that journey from our house to the library, which was paradise, I felt like Dante going through hell every single day, especially in the summer because we couldn't play outside. Kids would throw rocks and dry dog poo at us.
Oh.
The library was our sanctuary, and I probably read every single volume that the St. Louis Public Library, South Kings Highway branch had. And Miss Duncan, there were times when she would just one block, she would drive us home to make sure we got home safely. That is how my love affair with reading started. And Miss Duncan, I thought that she was a superhero because there wasn't an author I could mention that she hadn't heard of. She knew every book that had ever been written, at least my 8-year-old mind thought she did. She introduced me, and I went from Clifford the Big Red Dog books that I would get at the Scholastic Book Fair at school, straight to O. Henry, Flannery O'Connor, Ambrose Bierce, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Washington Irving. She gave me my first, I guess, really true education in literature, because not only would she recommend the books and I'd read them, we would discuss them afterward. She was incredible.
That is awesome. I mean, it's always good to have someone who you look up to kind of encouraging you, and it's good that you had someone in your life, even through the midst of that as you meant the journey between your home to the library, that perilous path, you still had someone who was caring at the other end that encouraged that. But I also give you credit because you didn't let that discourage you. Oh,
God, no, that helped make me the hellion I am today. I spent so much time I'd say between 8 and 12 years old, thinking of I really seriously wanted to become a supervillain. I wanted to get revenge on the kids who had been so mean to me for absolutely no reason. And the only thing that diverted me from that path is one day I was riding my banana handle bike down the sidewalk as fast as I could, and I had tied a flat twin-size sheet around my neck as a cape, and I was going so fast trying to make the cape billow behind me. I hit an uneven square of the sidewalk. Cape flips over my eyes. I can't see a thing. My shoulder hit a tree. I went spinning off into the street. Cape still over my head. I hear a car skid to a stop. That is when I decided to use my powers for good.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Now, this is a perfect time. For those who don't know Crystal Hubbard, almost everything you write is like a story in itself. The words that come out of your mouth right now, I'm sitting here, the way you just described that, it's a gift that you have. It's truly...
This is just life. Everyone has this gift. I think not everyone takes the time to explore it.
Absolutely.
And that makes me a little bit sad because I think as much as I love reading, every person has at least one good story in them. And I think they owe it to the rest of the world to share it.
Well said. Wow. I do believe everyone is gifted in some kind of way and has great talent to exchange and give out. But you definitely have found a way to master that. And the catalog of books that you've written is definitely proof of that. I kind of want to know how you find time and inspiration to write so much. And just for the record, you've written, from what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that you've written over 20 books.
This is 20.
20.
It's definitely over 25.
25. Well,
I think it may be 31, but some of them were written for publishers that went out of business, and I've written a lot of educational text that belongs to the publisher, but the byline is still mine. Okay. I write for standardized testing, which I love because I think test scores improve when the writing passages are interesting. And I worked very hard to make them so much more interesting than the passages I had to read for the Iowa Test of Basic Skills that I took from like 3rd to 8th grade in St. Louis.
There are things that I've read from my Iowa State test that I believe to be gospel truth to this day. And I don't know who wrote it. I never knew where they came from, and I was like, I'd want to know more, but the bell would ring, and I'd have to put my pencil down, and I want to follow up with the story that they, the little passage they gave me to review for those tests. So how do you do that? What is the process of writing for a standardized test?
It's I liken it to a sonnet where I am given specific parameters such as what vocabulary the piece has to contain, what grade I'm writing for. But within those limitations, I can do pretty much whatever I want.
Okay.
So that's where the freedom comes in. But since there are core standards that have to be met, they always make sure that I haven't gone too far in one direction, that I've neglected something, that I've left something out. So I'm supervised.
I mean, but being the story writer that you are, how do you start that process?
I began my writing career as a reporter.
Yes.
So journalism, which report means to give a report. You're supposed to be objective, no editorializing. You don't see that so much in most newspapers anymore. Everybody's got an opinion, and they all think you need to hear it. But as a reporter, I just stuck to the facts. The who, what, when, where, why, and if necessary, the how. So that's one style of writing. I began my career writing as a reporter, but I began my book writing career writing a romance novel and a picture book.
Right.
And I sent both of those out the same year. They got contracted by the two different publishers within 2 days of each other, and they were released in June and September of 2005, the same year. So that was exciting. I didn't realize at the time how unusual it was to get two different genres published in the same year. I just figured, hey, I could do this for a living. And so that's what I started to do. For historical romance novels, you start, at least I start, in the children's section of my library, because that's where I get the simplest breakdown of whatever era I'm writing about, what fashion was like, what the manners and social mores were, what food people ate. Everything is at its most basic. And then when I decide what I want to focus on, I move up from there into more serious, adult, detailed research. With a contemporary romance novel, I pretty much steal from the lives of my friends, because I have some silly women who are friends. I have some ridiculous men who are friends. I will pick one from each column, put them together in my imagination, and see what will happen. Let's see. For educational texts, I generally start with kind of like what my own memories were as a kid, what interested me, and what things really excited me. And if that doesn't work, because I have a 16-year-old daughter who says she's allergic to my childhood after I made her eat a fried bologna sandwich, I will go to my kids and their friends. My children are 22, 16, 13, and 11. So it's a nice big time gap.
Yeah.
And I just look around and see what are they interested in and how I can take this. Let's say they're interested in outer space, which has been creeping up in popularity with kids ever since the Mars rover landed all those years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'll take that and decide how can I make this appropriate for a 4th grade science passage or a 9th grade American history passage. There's always a way to take these pieces and carve them into the puzzle you want them to figure out. Yeah.
I appreciate the process that you go through, and I can see that you do this really well because you enjoy it and you have a system that you draw from, like an inspiration, a source of inspiration. You have friends, you have people around you that you can kind of just watch and create a story from. How do you
from?
Yeah, right. Well, how do they ever, do they ever feel some kind of way about it, or do they ever recognize themselves? I'll ask that because I have a friend of mine who's a movie director. He's a film writer. Yeah, you understand. So you see what I'm getting at. Like, a lot of times I'd be talking to him in confidence that we're having a good time. He'd say, you know what? Let me write that down. I'm like, write what down? What are you talking about? He's just like, hold on. I'm going to put that somewhere. And I'm like, what are we doing right now? But he is a good friend of mine, and I always trust his judgment because he always makes sure he does the story justice. But I wonder if your friends ever feel a certain way about the way you write, or if they recognize themselves in your stories.
Well, it's yes and no. It's mostly family members who recognize themselves.
Oh.
And I have 5 sisters, and each one of them is shadier than the next. My older sister, Kim, who I refer to on Facebook as my perfect older sister, Kim, she will wait till maybe 4 or 5 months after a book has come out, and then we'll just be talking casually about something else, and she'll go, well, I don't remember this happening the way you put it in your book. And I'll say, what are you talking about? And she'll give me the details, and I'll say, well, none of that is you. You don't have red hair.
Ah.
You don't like cherries. The whole feigned innocent thing.
Yeah.
It's totally her. It's completely her.
I think it's creative license, right? Is that what they call it? Creative liberty? To be able to...
Yes. And then there's that lovely disclaimer at the beginning of the book that says, this story is wholly the product of the imagination of the author and in no way resembles any person living or dead.
I'm going to use that in real life.
Oh, my God. I walk around saying it, shortly describe it later.
Oh, man. That's funny. That's hilarious. I mean, I can see how you can get so many books out of your life because you definitely know how to how to acknowledge and capture those moments, and that's a gift.
Everybody fascinates me. I mean, I have yet to meet a person who I've found to be boring. And when someone is close to being boring, that's when I'll notice that one weird thing that totally changes. Like I do a lot of volunteer work at a rest home way out in Chesterfield, which is about probably a good 15 miles away from me.
Okay.
And there was an older lady who I thought she was just such a drag because she was the same every day, always the same. And then one day I passed by her room and I smelled something that I haven't smelled since college, if you know what I mean. Yeah. That, I was so delighted because it was so startlingly unexpected.
Yes.
She's one of my favorite people now because she's one of those people that has such a grip on herself. I mean, she was using this particular substance because she has glaucoma.
Right.
But she is the last person on earth I would have thought would ever.
You know, that's funny because
to me.
I think that's a great thing that you mentioned because I noticed that in stories, like in real life, the more interesting the flaws that are in people that exist, that I think the more interesting the character is as a person, and as long as they're able to, I guess, keep that in check now. But in the comics, I really identified with some of the villains as well because they had a part of them that really appealed to the issues that were happening in real life. And you saw that they were bad guys not just by choice, but by circumstance and by the reason of where they were. And I could understand and sympathize with them. So I think that went on a tangent. But I feel like when you were saying that about the villain and wanting to be a villain, and also seeing that this woman who carried herself a certain way, and then she showed this moment of kind of like being a human, I think that makes a good story or a good character in real life as well.
I think with characters like that, with a good or the heroic character, that we aspire to be like that person. But with villains, we know in our hearts we share some of those emotions too. And at least for me, sometimes I care more for the villain because I sympathize more, because I relate more to what caused that character's villainy, whether it's, and it's always, to me, the more mundane seeming emotions, like loneliness, can turn you into a monster. I think that's the biggest one I think I come across in all my interactions with real people, is that feeling of isolation is more likely to create a monster than anything else. And that's typically the fuel that I feed my villains. I try to make them very human by giving them the most base emotions that can turn a person ugly, because that's something I really could relate to, so I can describe it more accurately. The flip side of that coin is that the way I got over that was, one, almost being run over by a car, but also I had a mother and a grandmother who, while my sisters and I were scared to walk to up to the library because of kids being mean to us, as adults, they had to deal with far worse things than we did. And they did not turn ugly or mean because of it. They literally took the high road. I don't know how they could. I was a manhandler in 6th grade. That's what the word my grandma used to use, because I would fight anybody that said the wrong thing to me. And the N-word was the number one wrong thing to say to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But out of those, as I matured, thankfully, I started to take more from my grandma and use the strength of kindness and inner peace to basically in with anger, out with love. That's a line from Absolutely Fabulous, and it cracked me up on the show, but it really means something in real life to me as well.
Have you ever That's amazing, and I'm glad that you were surrounded by such, like, again, you had a lot of good people in your community and your neighborhood and your home as well. Were they storytellers as well? Like, did they pass that on to you?
No. My mother can't even tell a joke. My mother will say, oh, I heard this joke today. Aren't you glad I didn't say orange? No, that's not how it is. Okay. Okay, knock, knock. You say who's there. Okay, you're supposed to say banana. Aren't you glad I didn't say orange? That's how my mother tells a story. No, she is not a storyteller. My grandmother, she used to more or less tell the same few stories over and over, and they always involve bad things happening to little girls who didn't clean up their room.
Okay, okay.
Like I said, I mentioned I have 5 sisters.
Right.
My sisters are great writers and great storytellers, too.
Okay.
They just never felt the need to put it down on paper and pursue it as a career. From there, I've been keeping a journal since I was 8.
Wow.
I write in it every day, even if it's just one sentence.
Now, speaking of journals and what you've been writing and how you communicate your expressions and all, that's how it sounds like you got your start. What kind of books do you read now?
Right now, I am wicked into author-illustrated picture books. I do a lot of writing workshops in public schools during the school year.
Yep.
So I read to my kindergarten through 3rd graders. I always start the workshop by reading them a book. And I am just so into authors like Don Tate, David Bedricki, I hope that I said his name right, Kevin Attenberry, people who illustrate and write their own books. I can't draw for nothing, and it makes me crazy because I have stories in my head, and I know exactly how I want them to look, but all I can do is use words to describe that. I can't actually draw, so I'm stuck. But when I look at someone like Don Tate, for example, he is just a superstar in my mind because he can accomplish both tasks. He can write what he wants and then make it look exactly the way he wants. It is the happiest marriage.
I can relate because I read his books as well. I think based on what you recommended. So I know exactly what you're talking about. He's a phenomenal author, writer as well, illustrator too. And I can't draw the same character repeatedly, and he's very artistic as well. So I struggle with that, and I can understand how hard that is. I can appreciate how difficult that is to be able to do both and be good at it. You mentioned that you do work in the public schools, and I definitely want to talk about that because part of the purpose of the program is to help people understand what is happening in the world and the great people that are doing these things. And I wanted to also learn about what inspired you as a phenomenal person to do the things that you do. One of the things that you do is you teach.
I volunteer because teachers are superheroes. They are the foundation of any great society. Any smart person you meet, a teacher helps them get there. And so teachers definitely are a different breed than what I am. I'm a great teacher's assistant and a volunteer, but not a teacher.
So you don't teach per se, but you teach students how to write. You do a writing workshop. You've been doing that in the school system for some time now. How long? 2007. Since 2007. I want to talk about Mother Hubbard's Cupboard.
Hubbard's Cupboard. That started. I love being with the kids. I put myself through college and grad school by being a nanny and taking care of 3 beautiful little boys in Baltimore, Maryland. I just absolutely love being around kids. I love their toys. I love the weird things they say, the strange things they do. They give me such fuel for my imagination when it comes to writing children's books. So I would always spend lunch hour at whatever school I would happen to be doing a writing workshop at. Right. And I'd always bring my own lunch because, who wants to eat lunchroom food? I'm too old for that. and kids would like sort of cluster around me and say, "What is that?" You know, they'd look at hummus and have no idea what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And I would ask them to guess, and the first thing they always said, "That's baby poo."
Ooh.
You know, that kind of thing. And I'm like, "Well, do you want to taste it?" "Yes."
Yeah.
And so I get a little hummus on a pizza cracker, and this is good. Taste of this or taste that. I started bringing bigger and bigger lunches. And I started noticing that it was a lot of the same kids that would come and share my lunch with me. Further investigation would show that they were getting free lunch because their parents didn't want the stigma of signing up for free lunch and having everybody know that they were in financial straits.
Right.
There would be kids who weren't on, who would like pay for lunch, but if they were in arrears, the kids, you know, it's like the school would blame the child for that debt and not the parents.
Right.
And so the kids would get one piece of that plastic wrapped, like Kraft Singles, American cheese, 2 pieces. It was like a jail lunch. Yeah. It was a piece of fruit, cheese wrapped in plastic, and 2 slices of white bread, and then a milk. And this would be the same lunch day in and day out until their bill was paid. So I just started bringing, I mean, it got to the point where I was looking at these 2 collapsible coolers to the lunchrooms every day because I wanted to make sure my kids had a piece of fruit, a protein, a treat. I would call parents and ask if this child had any sort of dietary requirement, like don't let it, even though he asks for chocolate, don't give it to him because you don't want him breaking out in hives.
Right.
During class time, they're my students, but at lunchtime, they're my babies. And no mama is going to let their babies go hungry.
Absolutely not.
And so that's how Mother Hubbard's Cupboard started. One of my friends from high school was communicating with me on a thread on Facebook where I'd been writing about feeding kids who come from what's now called food insecure homes.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you should just have a Mother Hubbard's Cupboard and fill it with food. And I was like, that is such a corny name, but I'm going to do it. And so now I have a cupboard, which is generally like a shelf in a cloakroom or one of those big metal armoire storage units or something at all my schools. And it started out with just food. Now it's gone into like deodorant and hygiene products and toothpaste and toothbrushes. I call everybody I know. I didn't realize that one of the other advantages of being an old person is that you get to know people. So my dentist, who I've been going to for 12 years, I'm like, dude, you give me a free toothbrush and free toothpaste every time I come here, and I never use it. So do you have any to spare for my kids at school? I figured he'd give me maybe 12 toothbrushes, 12 toothpaste.
Right.
He gave me a box of 144 toothbrushes, 144 little toothpastes. I divvied them up into Ziploc bags with soaps and washcloths and little deodorants and stuff, and made what we call blessing bags to give to my kids at school. They're just little things that we take for granted that, you know, so most of us just like, I don't even want to say most of us because it's not most of us anymore. You go to Walgreens, you need it, you buy it.
Right.
When I look at the clinical strength Dove deodorant, it costs almost $10 a stick, and it'll last you a month.
Yep.
There are families that actually have to decide, am I going to get this deodorant, or am I going to get this medication, or am I going to get some fresh produce? I mean, cherries at the market cost more than meat right about now.
Absolutely.
It's frustrating to see. It really is. And I grew up, we had nothing. My father left us when I was almost 3. And that's when my mother decided, you know, I can't just be a housewife. She went to school. She got her teaching degree. She got a job during the day working as a teacher. And in the evening, she worked at a pharmacy called Gaston's that's long gone out of business. So she kept 2 jobs to take care of us, and my grandmother, my mother's mother, lived with us. And she was our evening babysitter. She worked at an industrial laundry until she was about 56 when one of her knees went.
Wow.
And the two of them just were phenomenal parents. I mean, my mother taught me all about, all that lady stuff, like how to sit right and not expose your secrets and being polite and all that. My grandma, she's the one who taught me how to change the oil in a car, how to choke a carburetor with a pencil, how to change tires. I changed a tire on I-93 in Boston in an evening gown on the way to a reporting assignment. I changed the tire in the rain in 7 minutes in heels and an evening dress. This is how good my grandma was at teaching me all the stuff that I guess a dad would have taught a son. So I got no complaints. Right. And the long and short of it, my natural father had a temper. And as much as I would have loved having two conventional parents, I think me and my sisters were better off. Yeah. That he decided to hit the road. Wow. What an amazing story. Like, not even just one story. All your stories are really so compelling. I'm just so, I'm here like a everybody has these stories. Yeah, but not everybody's so eloquent at giving the details and remembering all the highlights of those times. A lot of us take things for granted, and it's unfortunate because we don't share enough of our stories. And I think sharing stories like yours and sharing the books that you've written are definitely a good exchange for people to understand other perspectives, but also just get inspiration from them.